Hello. Welcome back to my channel. This time I decided to do something slightly different. Instead of altering AI art, I'm going to create my own drawing. However, I am still using AI to generate the background for my piece. In case you haven't heard of Cyberpunk, Edgerunners, it is a new anime series on Netflix. A story about David Martinez, a street kid who tries to survive in a futuristic world by becoming an edgerunner, a mercenary outlaw, also known as a cyberpunk. Based on the video game, Cyberpunk 2077, the show has gained quite an extensive following and fan base on its own accord, garnering a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a 96% audience score. My intent here is not to diminish the show's popularity or cast any form of disrespect to its many fans. However, I do have some opinions on how the show may be somewhat overrated. I would like to emphasize that these are my own opinions and are definitely open to debate. Number 1. Terrible lead character. David Martinez is the main focus of the story, and is presented as the hero. However, this couldn't be farther from the truth. In all honesty, David is a selfish asshole. For starters, David was attending an expensive, high-level school, because his mom was working herself to death to pay his tuition fees. In fact, it was her dying wish for him to finish school and achieve a better life than she could otherwise provide. Rather than honor her wishes, the first thing he did was get himself expelled over a petty quarrel with a bully. Sure, he tried to sell the cyberware he found in his mother's belongings, but he had other options. Even after he had the cyberware installed, he could have used it to work some smaller jobs for Maine and make money himself to stay in school. Number 2. Inconsistent plot points. All throughout the series, it is made perfectly clear that if a person has too much cyberware installed, it will wear on their sanity and eventually drive them to a berserker frenzy, killing everyone in sight. It is also well established that David is somehow special, that he has a higher tolerance to the influence of the cyberware than the average person. However, late in the series, we find that David is only moderately more resistant to the rage. Much less so than what is perceived. Losing his mind completely, until he is saved by Lucy's kiss of true love. The character, Atom Smasher, on the other hand, is told to be nearly 100% cybernetic, and yet he has maintained his wits perfectly. Number 3. No value for life. During the runtime of the series, there is much death and destruction, so much so, that it can be understandable for one to become desensitized to the carnage. However, it is as though the characters have no concern at all for the loss of fallen comrades. When a character dies, their companions seem to be angry at the loss, but only for a moment. Then, it's as though the fallen friend had never existed. Human life in the series seems to have no value whatsoever. Number 4. Senseless killing. This is a bit of an extension of the last point, and so many prominent characters were killed off for no other reason than the sake of killing them. In my opinion, only 3 deaths were really important to the telling of the story. Pillar's death was important for establishing the no one is safe policy of the series. His death established that anyone could meet their end suddenly and unexpectedly. Maine's death was important because after the passing of David's mother, Maine had become his surrogate father figure, his mentor. Maine's passing signaled the point in David's life where he had no other choice but to grow out of his former self and grow into the independent adult he had to be. And finally, Kiwi's death was necessary because she was the traitor. She betrayed her friends who trusted her, and even though she had her redemption soon after, she had already sealed her fate. Although I understand that the no one is safe idea is pointless unless it is exercised, one death in particular really annoys me. Rebecca was a headstrong character who was not afraid to put herself in harm's way. However, she was not the kind of character who would needlessly sacrifice herself for no reason. Her death in the final episode was pointless, and to be frank, stupid. It not only went against her character, but was also an insult to her as well. Not to mention that I, as a viewer, felt insulted. She saw Atom Smasher coming in on her. She had plenty of time to react. Plenty of time to dodge out of the way, or to be rescued by someone else. Instead, she stupidly stood her ground yelling profanity at Smasher, simply allowing him to close in and crush her to pieces. For the sake of the scene, she could have easily been replaced by Falco, the driver character who was barely in the show. He was so insignificant to the story, I had to Google his name, If the writers were really so intent on killing off Rebecca, they could have done so in a more respectable way. She could have sacrificed herself to save Lucy, or even David Martinez, who she obviously had an emotional attraction to. Instead, she just threw away her life for nothing. And finally, number 5, terrible ending. In most story narratives, the characters grow, work together, and make sacrifices to achieve a goal. However, in Cyberpunk, Edgerunners, all the build-up, development, and sacrifices lead up to virtually nothing. In the end, Lucy gets to go to the moon, as she had always dreamed. However, the large corporation who was after her is still very much in power, practically unharmed. They are surely going to keep hunting her and eventually find her. This time she will not have her friends to help protect her. Also, Atom Smasher is undefeated, unharmed, and fully functional. David was unable to make even the slightest blemish on him. So he, too, will be on the hunt for Lucy, as per his employer's wishes. If David was able to activate some kind of self-destruct, sacrificing himself to take out Smasher, and a few of his accomplices as well, then the ending would have made much more sense and been somewhat more satisfying. However, this was not the case. As mentioned before, these points are merely my humble opinions. Feel free to disagree with me, or point out things I may have missed. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for more content in the future. Thank you for watching.